Kelly. Nice to do this with you so far from home.
So, Love and Treasure is so beautiful.
Thank you.
And I'm thinking about the scope of your career, and you started with the mommy mysteries.
Yes.
And then you went super confessional, memoir, bad mother.
Right.
And now this is a totally different kind of book.
Well, you know, I've been wanting to write this book for a long time. I've been wanting to sort of address issues of World War II, of the Holocaust, but I felt like I couldn't. I didn't dare until I had learned how to write, until I taught myself how to write, until I had enough, you know, those Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours.
Yes.
Until I had those under my belt and I could do justice to the material.
So it's always been on your mind. This has always been out there for you.
Some version of this story, although I was worried, you know, I knew I wanted to write about the Holocaust, but I didn't want to write some kind of Holocaust kitsch, you know. I didn't want to write that novel about the one good German, the little girl who's saved by, you know, I wanted to write something that felt true and honest and not exploitative. And then I found this story of the Hungarian Gold Train, this train load of the property of the Jews of Hungary that kind of perambulated around Middle Europe at the end of the war and ended up in the hands of the American army. And I thought, that's my story.
And then you went to Hungary.
And then I went to Hungary. I researched in Hungary for quite a while. A friend of mine was, Eleni Tsakopoulos-Kounalakis, was named ambassador to Hungary. And it turns out
How convenient.
Yes, it's very convenient when you can stay in the American ambassador's residence. It was, you know, definitely the way I'm going to be doing my research from now on. Yeah. But it was terrific. You know, I always say, like, I decided to write the book because I wanted to visit Eleni and deduct the trip as a research expense, and that's really not far off from the truth. But it was great. I researched in Hungary. I researched in Salzburg, and then I went to Dachau, which, you know, I have a certain...
You'd
never been to a camp. Never. And I have a certain amount of ambivalence about the whole sort of tourism of concentration camps.
Yes.
People taking selfies in front of the crematoria, which was actually something I saw. But, you know, Dachau has a remarkable museum, and I actually think it's worth going just for the museum. It's worth a day there just to see. It's impeccably curated and devastating, but also really, really smart and intelligently done. And for that alone, it was worth the trip.
And what of that experience landed in the book? Can you say?
So many things. So there are 3 sections of the book. The first section takes place in 1945 and 46 in Salzburg, and it's about the DP camps and the Hungarian Gold Train, and it's told from the point of view of an American Army captain who's charged with guarding the train. The second section of the book takes place in present-day Budapest, and it's about that Army captain's granddaughter he's stolen something from the train, and she is looking for someone to return it to. And it's about sort of the wake of the Holocaust and the way it lives on in memory. And then the third section of the book takes you back to Budapest in 1913, and it's about this young suffragette and her psychoanalyst. And it's about sort of the richness and complexity of the Jewish community of Budapest before World War I.
And so when you're putting together this fairly complex novel with a pretty broad cast of characters, are you working with your husband, Michael Chabon? Like, is he? Yeah, I want to know.
Michael and I work together all the time. I mean, we each look, we write our own work, but nothing leaves our house without the other person sort of dipping their fingers into it, editing it. I mean, not even email. Like, if it's an important email, we'll
I'll
edit
remember
each
that
other.
the next time you email me that he's been he's overseen this.
But you know, it's funny because friends of mine who are writers, when they see a manuscript that he's edited for me or a manuscript that I've edited for him, they're horrified because it's just a sea of red ink. And like his big note to me is DB, which is do better.
Oh.
There's nothing like on draft 7. You get draft 7 and you're like, do better, you do. And my note to him is yuck, which I think is equally horrible. Yeah. But you know, I always say when I'm editing Friends, I do this thing called the praise sandwich. I praise, I critique, I praise, so that they have this, you know, and the thing about being married for 21 years is you don't need the bread. You just go right to the critique.
Yes, yeah, which is such a gift, right?
Absolutely.
Because the industry's changing so much. Do you feel those changes?
We feel it every day. I mean, I don't think I even really understand. I'm a writer because I love to read. I've read voraciously ever since I was a kid, and I still meet people out on the road who love to read, but I worry that those of us who love books and those of us who love to sink into the magic of a story and to sink into someone else's point of view, that we're getting, you know, that this group, we're getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And I still see, I have 4 kids, and 2 of them are voracious readers and love to read. And 2 of them, one of them reads a lot, but it's all Reddit. I don't know what that does for you. But I wonder what it's going to be in a world of Amazon and look, I love YouTube videos too. I just watched the high maintenance Vimeo series. Love that.
Yeah.
But like, what's the room for a 450-page novel with shifting time periods and complex characters and love and war? I don't know. Is there still room for that in the world?
Yes, of course there is. Absolutely,
okay.
Without a doubt. We have to hold hands and march into that future together.
Absolutely.
What is the loveliest thing that someone has said about your writing?
Well, I had this incredible experience recently. A 94-year-old woman who is a Hungarian Holocaust survivor came to an event of mine and told me that this was the first book she had been able to read all the way through in a while because of her memory, but that it transported her back in time to her life before the war. And because the book takes place after the war and before the war, but never during the war.
Yeah.
And it took her back to that time, and she said that I had given her back her family. And that, I mean, I can't really talk about that without getting emotional. That was a really remarkable moment for me.
Yep.
That made it all worthwhile.
Absolutely, right? You can just rest right there.
Right.
You have to write that on your wall so that it counterbalances.
During those days where that voice in your head.
Yes,
that
if your
nasty
Amazon sales rank is dropping, you just remember the 94-year-old. Focus.
Exactly, for sure.
Two questions. One is, do you have a teacher that you want to give a shout out to? A great teacher that you think?
My 6th grade son's English teacher.
That's cool.
That's who I want to give a shout out to. So my son, I walked into his room recently and he was going through the dictionary and I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I am finding vocabulary words to use in my comments in class because I want Ms. Palmer to know I'm smart." And I was like, "Ms. Palmer, you got that boy reading the dictionary. Praise to Ms. Palmer of Black Pine Circle, 6th grade."
Yeah, that's really cool. And has there been a time where you just made a monster fool out of yourself, a thing that you failed at that you still play in the night?
Dude, Kelly, you know me. My life is like one series of catastrophic failures after another. Like everything.
That's the way you think of them. The rest of us are like totally knocked out by what you've achieved.
Oh my God, where shall we begin? Should we talk about all of the manuscripts that are in? I wrote a whole book and gave it to my editor, and she said, "Canada? Who cares?" That one guy, it was like a year and a half's worth of work. There was the time I went, I published in the New York Times that I love my husband more than my children, and everyone in America hated me. What
Not
else
everybody. There was
everybody.
One very important woman who thought that was a very interesting thing to say. Enter Oprah.
Yeah. Yes.
Let me ask you this: what's coming for 2015?
A lot. I think that the life of the contemporary novelist has expanded in this way. If you want to keep, food on the table, you have to do a lot of things. So I'm writing a novel that I'm really excited about called 100 Years of Sonnen Bloom.
Great.
I'm working on a TV series.
Great.
And I'm writing a movie. And all of those things are, I can juggle them all, and that I can juggle those and my 4 children and my Twitter feed at the same time still boggles my mind. But you got to do it all, or you're not going to do anything.
That's right. Oh, it was so great to talk to you. I could talk to you forever. But,
we'll just go home and have coffee.
That's right.
Okay,
I'll see you on the West Coast.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Kelly.